Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Gamefromscratch, and today is a big day if you're an Unreal Engine developer because Unreal Engine 5.3 is here. So we're going to jump right in with a little bit of hands-on demonstration of what I think two of the coolest new features are, and then we will come back to the release notes, the overview, etc. There's actually not a ton in this particular release, but there's two things I actually find very, very cool. So let's go ahead and showcase the first of them. So what we're going to do here, we need a character to play along here. So let's go in here. We'll find good old Manny and drop Manny into the scene. So we got a mannequin to work with, like so. What we are going to do is take Manny over here, and we are going to go to Edit. So there is new functionality that is built into Unreal Engine 5.3, and we're getting more and more of these cool new features where you're kind of not needing to go to your modeling tool to do updates. What we've got now, so here I am with my skeletal mesh in here, and what you're going to notice is we now have editing tools and we have skeletal tools over here. So I can come in here and I can actually edit the skeletons for models in my game. So if I want to add bones, change bones, and so on, you have both an add mode and an edit mode, so we can grab a bone in the world and we can move it around, we can change it, we can reposition it, and so on. So you can actually edit your skeleton directly inside of Unreal Engine 5. On top of that, you can actually even get into skin weight painting. So if you want to make some changes to an existing model, for example, you can do it here, and then we'll give this one a second. And here you can see the actual mesh weight, so you can actually paint the weight for each individual bone for your animated characters. So they're adding more and more modeling tools, but they're actually adding these skeletal animation tools here as well. This is one of the coolest new features in my opinion. This is the skeletal editor. By the way, if you do want to check out editing skeletons directly inside of Unreal Engine, what you need to do is go into Edit, Plugins, and then go and find it. So and you're going to find it right there, Skeletal Mesh Editing Tools, and you'll notice they are experimental. That's something to definitely be aware of because, quite frankly, you should not be using those in production because there's no guarantee that they will actually come to Unreal Engine, although I'm pretty certain they will. Another really cool feature we got in this release is support for VDVs, also sparse virtual textures, SVT files. They kind of work together. So I'm going to do open up content drawer, and then I will come over here. I will go ahead and create a new folder, and I will call this Mike's Stuff. And inside of Mike's Stuff, we will go over here and we will drop frame 0000 of our VDB file. So VDBs can be authored in a couple of ways. These ones actually came from EmberGen. You're going to notice the second I import it, it's going to say, oh, I found 128 frames of it. Would you like me to import them all? And I'm going to say, yes, I would like you to import them all. So SVT is more than just VDB support, but that is definitely part of it. This is a way of storing 3D information in voxels. This is actually going to be used internally for their whole Niagara particle systems as well. But the hands-on applicable way that you're going to be able to use it, the thing I'm demonstrating today, is the ability to use VDBs. So we're going to let this guy load in. I'll pause it until that's done. It doesn't take long. And notice what it's creating is a sparse virtual texture here. This is a more memory-efficient format than the VDB because the VDB file was actually like several gigabytes in size. I think that one was 2 gigabytes in size total. And some of these can be like 10 gigs and so on. So this is creating a much more real-time friendly version of things. And now what we're going to do is come back to Content Browser. Do make sure that you have settings and engine content turned on. Go up here to All and then search for Sparse Virtual Texture Viewer. All right, so I think I screwed something up. I did screw something up. It's not virtual, it's volume. So Sparse Volume Texture Viewer, this guy right here. And then you just basically want that guy and drop it into your scene. This is a quick and easy way of working with the SVT data that we got from the VDB file. Now, you could also do this, through your Niagara setup, much more elaborate. You can interact with the various different channels from the VDB, etc. But now that we have that sparse virtual texture created, I'm going to get rid of my filter over here. And let's go back to Mike's Stuff over here. There is our imported tornado. And what we're going to do is drop it in the sparse virtual texture preview category here. So let's just take that guy over here, drop it in over here, and what you will see is a tornado inside of our little cube. So we can move our viewer around, we can resize it, etc. I'm going to sit here and turn on animation on there. And boom, you can bring in a VDB file and now use those inside of Unreal Engine 5.3. That's pretty cool. VDB files are used for a ton of special effects, volumetric effects, and so on. So that's pretty cool. So let's go back to the release now. So I'm going to do the quick overview of what is in this release. As I mentioned earlier on, there's not actually a ton to this release. A lot of incremental improvements. One of the things we've got now is orthographic rendering that is used quite often for architectural and engineering type stuff, but it can also give you a stylistic choice. We got cinematic quality volumetric rendering. That's kind of what we just quickly saw in action. Obviously, I saw you the very basis of it. So you got new sparse volume textures. I just showed you the viewer, the quick and easy way of checking these things out. So you can bring in those VDB assets and check them out in action. That is actually the same asset I just looked at there. So you can see how detailed you can actually bring them in. And then, of course, we've got core refinements, including VSM, TSR, hair grooms, path tracing, and Substrate. Substrate being their new PBR material system. It's getting more and more mature as well. We also have improvements to the CPU and memory resources when converting content internally. So when you're cooking stuff for various different platforms, it should just work faster, which is always nice because the build process in Unreal Engine is painfully slow. As we mentioned earlier on, there is the new skeletal editor enabling you to do paint skin weights, change and edit skeletons, even create them from scratch if you wish. That again is experimental, but that is a very cool feature in my opinion. And we also now have cloth-based simulations in the chaos physics simulation using machine learning simulation. So the cloth panel editor is now available with the skin weight transfer algorithms. So you can basically create realistic cloth and have it stretch and bounce and bend and work in your world, which is pretty cool. Then in the world of film production, we got a number of improvements there and display support for PTE ST2110. I'll pretend like a second I don't have any idea what that's all about, but I'm not involved in virtual production. Cinecam rig rails and VCam enhancements. And yeah, that is the highlight. So again, there's not a ton of marquee new features. Just a bunch of little incremental improvements across the board. I did showcase like the star of the show, in my opinion, is the volumetric rendering and the skeletal editor. Like at the end of the day, though, multi-process cooking, the actual building your assets faster, I think people are going to appreciate that. Of course, we're just scratching the surface of what is here. So you got a ton of like small incremental improvements or new. Again, anything flagged as experimental you should not be using because there's a chance that it won't even make it into Unreal Engine, and it's probably not super stable yet. It goes from experimental to beta to feature release, just so if you understand the origin. So you can almost think of experimental as alpha. But Nanite got a number of improvements. Of course, Lumin did as well. So you can now have more than one bounce with hardware ray tracing with hit lighting and max reflection bounces. So you got orthographic rendering is available as experimental. So it gives you a new stylized option for rendering. So it's now supported as experimental, fix multiple areas of the engine to achieve parity between perspective and orthographic production. So we also have the sparse volume textures. We showed you very simply how that worked for you to bring in a VDB file. Variety of OpenVDB sources out there. Again, Django Effects is one of them. I'll show you that in just a second. Also, again, the key is Niagara fluids are now cached internally to SVTs, which will result in better performance and memory improvements. So if you're wondering exactly what an SVT is, it's similar to a 3D texture or volume. Again, everything is stored in voxel information, and it only stores the interesting bits. So all the empty bits can be ignored, makes it, again, sparse. That's the S part of the name. And again, you'll get better performance out of there. We got improvements to the path tracer as well, including some of them being experimental. So it now has support for a heterogeneous volume such as smoke, fire, and clouds, which is pretty cool. Substrate materials also are now supported in the path tracer. So again, Substrate is that new material system they are working on, as we're talking about right here. Again, it is flagged as experimental, but I don't see a Substrate staying experimental. What it's going to do is basically allow new properties, so you can do things like what you could have trouble doing with the PBR workflow, things like glint and specular profiles, fuzz, and so on. So it's going to give you the ability to recreate real-world materials a little bit better. Virtual shadow maps are now no longer beta and can actually be considered production-ready. So like I said, things go from experimental to beta to production-ready, and virtual shadow maps just made that jump. Hair just got improvements here, including streaming support for groom and groom binding assets, temporal super resolution, introduced new functionality for more automated control of the screen percentage in games with dynamic resolution is displayed. render resource viewer in there, lighting improvements. And yeah, it just kind of keeps going and going and going. Procedural generation, there's some new nodes and options in there. PCG is actually one of the coolest new features of Unreal Engine. I think it came with 5.2 was when PCG was first added in, but obviously they keep adding new elements in and new features and functionalities there as well. Again, multi-process cook should get you better build times, which is nice. They have moved to C+20 as the default version of things. And yeah, and now we're just basically zooming through the rest of it. So there is a ton of smaller things in here. The cool thing here for Apple users, if you have an M2 device, or theoretically later, you now have Nanite support there. Unfortunately, it does not look like M1 devices are going to get it, but that is, if you're a Mac user, something you are going to be very happy about. And yeah, there's a bunch more in here. The machine learning deformer for doing complex rigs. So we got a number of improvements in 5.3. Yeah. And again, I'm not going to go through all the rest of these things. We also have a variety of beta features in here as well, that broken down that way. I get into a little bit of a repetition of current features here, but Unreal Engine 5.3, kind of an incremental improvement in my humble opinion, but definitely one worth checking out. And if you want to check out the new VDB stuff, the place where you can get a number of them for download is over on Django Effects. They make EmberGen, which is a very cool application. I've checked out on the channel in the past if you want to learn more about it. It creates these fluid simulations, and you got a variety of these VDB files you can download. Once again, 5 gigabytes in size, 3.5 gigabytes in size. The one I looked at was 1.7 gigabytes in size, 5.5 gigabytes in size. So the VDB files are really large. That's why you like the SVT, or the sparse representation of it. It pulls in the majority of the data, strips it down to just what you need for game level performance, and makes it ready to go. So ladies and gentlemen, that is it. Unreal Engine 5.3 is here. Again, the things I think are coolest are the support for the SVTs and the new skeletal animation editor. But let me know what you think of this release in the comments down below, and I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.